We have Sohrab Kushrushahi here. He's a corporate lawyer turned fitness enthusiast, but he actually believes in fitness in a more holistic sense and for the long haul. So Sohrab, tell us, how does one continue to hike at when you're 90 years old, or be able to carry 2 suitcases when you're in your 90s, or run the treadmill, or climb 2 flights of stairs when you're in your 80s? How does one make that happen? How do you build up muscle strength, mobility, and stamina for the long haul?
One of the biggest problems we have today as a generation or as people is exactly what we've done in this room. We spent the last 1 hour and everyone's sitting down. Not a single person has moved. Not a single person has stood up. We stood up a couple of times. We forced them to stand up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of have my conversation standing up, okay? Now, when it comes down to fitness, right? When it comes down to, and we've had Umair talk about it, Ms. Bhatia spoke about a very interesting topic, which is sleep, which is something that's very dear to me. I'm not very good at it, I'll admit that, but I'm trying. Being a corporate lawyer for 15 years, that takes a toll on your sleep. And I was a capital markets lawyer, which means we were just constantly working. Now, fitness, right? I have slides, but I'm going to kind of talk to you guys more than use the slides. And I'm going to make you get up a lot through the next 5 minutes, so bear with me. Fitness, right? I look at fitness differently. No, I'm good. Oh, sorry. Okay, there you go. Fitness. What is fitness to an individual? Right? What constitutes you being fit or being unfit? Everyone has a different connotation. Everyone has a different answer. For some people, and this is my least favorite answer, is how much they weigh, right? You equate fitness with just how much that number on the weighing scale is. Now, Doctor touched upon a very interesting topic, which is sleep. Everyone has touched upon some interesting topics, and so has Umair. For me, there are a few aspects to fitness, right? It's not one thing. There's no one thing. I mean, if I come from my generation or I come from my mom's generation, it was all about walking, cardiovascular health. How much do we walk every day? How many steps do we take? What do we do there, right? The newer generation, it's gone on to strength training to a certain aspect, and I think that's very important. Human beings, we lose muscle every year, right? And after a certain age, we lose muscle at a faster rate. According to me, and I was having this discussion with Sir just before we started this panel, I think muscle is your most important organ. I may have a lot of people who disagree with me, but I think it's your most important organ. It's where everything happens. And your metabolic health starts with your muscles. It's very important that you have certain amount of muscle. Now, I'm going to ask you a very simple question. I'm going to ask you to stand up, so I apologize. How many of you all in this room actually strength train or do some form of resistance training at least 2 times a week? Stand up. That's not even 50%, right?
20.
We look at about 20 to 30%. How many of you all go for a walk every day?
Every day,
Or let's say 3 to 4 times a week. So this is much better, right? So that's where I'm kind of coming to, right? We look at how much we walk, and for us, walking is exercise. I hate to break it to you, walking is not exercise. Sorry, that's my opinion. So when I talk to my mom sometimes, and God bless her, she's 81 years old, and she talks to me about the fact that she has exercised, and I'm like, yeah, what did you do? And she's like, I went for a walk. I'm like, I'm sorry, not exercise. I meet a lot of people who tell me I train 5 times a week. I'm like, great. What do you do 5 times a week? I go for a walk for 1 hour every day. Sorry, that's not exercise. In my book, that's not exercise. So I think every individual at some level has to have some form of resistance training or strength training as part of their weekly schedule. Now, if you're someone who doesn't do it regularly, I'd say at least a couple of times a week. I'm not asking you to suddenly become Mr. World. No. I'm just saying go in a couple of times a week and do some basic strength work. And honestly, I think the older we get, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, we need it even more. I think the mindset's slightly different. We believe that 20-year-olds and 30-year-olds need to do it, but I think 50, 60, 70-year-olds need to do it even more. And that's what me and my team kind of focus on. We've got a bunch of students who are over the age of 65. My first student ever, when I made the switch from being a lawyer to kind of coaching, was a 63-year-old gentleman called Mr. Ajay Piramal, a founder, head of Piramal Industries. One of the most amazing people I have met in my life, because at the age of 64, he used to get up and go to the gym 3 times a week at 5:30 in the morning, without fail. And I love him to bits, but at that time I used to curse him because I'm like, you're making me wake up at 4:30 in the morning to come to you at 5:30. So different aspects. Now, there's 2 more aspects, or 1 more aspect of fitness which I think people ignore, which is your recovery. And that breaks into sleep and nutrition, right? We believe we're training, we believe we're doing really well, but we don't really focus on our food. And from what I saw right now, we don't even focus on our sleep. And to me, that's more important than what you do in terms of exercise. So everyone's different. So I left you with one thing, right? I said you've got to try and get strength training in twice a week. Everybody in this room, irrespective of your age, right? The second thing I would urge you to do is actually listen to Dr. Bhatia and get some sleep in. And I'm one of those who came from that era where we were like, oh, we're cool if we don't sleep. I'm sorry, that was a thing that happened. Sleep is a waste of time. I'm wasting my life by sleeping. I've heard a lot of that, right? And I've told that to myself a lot of times when I was a lawyer. I'm like, what am I going to achieve by sleeping? I'll have a few years to sleep later. It doesn't work, right? It kind of causes complications in your own health and in your own system. Another topic, and I'll be very brief about it, is nutrition, right? How many people in this room actually track the amount of protein you have on a daily basis? Stand up. I'm not making you sit down. Stand up. Okay. How many of y'all, you can sit back down. Okay, just stand up since you'll track your protein. Stand up. The ones who track their protein, stand up. Stand up. How many of y'all, and if the answer to this is no, sit down, have at least 1.4 to 1.6 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight? If you don't, sit down. Or you do. Excellent. That's brilliant. But that is 10 people in this audience, right? So I think the easiest thing when it comes to food, and something I'd love everybody to look at, is how much protein are they consuming. And it's a very big problem in the Indian diet, right? Because a lot of the Indian diet is rice, rotis, dals, but we don't really focus on how much protein we get in. And I'll come to that topic on protein in 2 minutes because I think it's a very important topic, and Umair touched upon it as well. Now, I'm going to ask you to kind of do, I talked to Dr. Soin, and we were going to do this in the audience, but I think it'll be unfortunate if we do this in the audience. People might kill me. Okay, so I want you to go home and do these 2 things, right? These 2 things are very important. How many people, or try this, right? It's a basic mobility test. I think mobility is also very important when it comes to training. How many people can actually sit down on the ground, cross-legged, and get up without using your hands? I'm not going to ask you to try it right now, okay? It might be a disaster. We might cause a lot of chaos. So I'm not going to ask you to try that. I love you for it. I swear I do. Not a lot of people can do that. You'll be surprised. You think this is very easy, and everyone should be able to do it. But go home today and try it out, and let's see how many of you all can, right? That's a very, very simple mobility test, something that I would look at from a longevity perspective, right? Doctor touched upon this when he started, and I was having a discussion before the panel started. Longevity is great, but quality of lifespan to me is more important. I might come from a different chain of thought, right? I want to be 80 or 85 or 90 or even 100, but I don't want anyone to help me do the basic things in life. For me, that is longevity. And that improves, yes, there are a bunch of medicines that you can take, and we've spoken about a lot of things here. But that improves with something very simple. It starts from within you, right? Can you eat well? Can you sleep well? Can you train regularly? Do these few things first before we go into the drugs and the preventive and everything, because this is preventive in my book, right? Second thing, I do this every day. I don't know how many of you all do it. When I sit down with my kids and eat, I sit cross-legged on the floor and eat. How many of you all do that? How many of you all do that? Stand up. You're going to keep standing up in my talk. That's great, but that's not even 50% of this crowd, right? As kids, when I was in school, I think we used to have a canteen and we used to sit on the ground and eat with our table or our desk. And you know, that was actually brilliant. If you go back to rural India, you'll see they don't have knee problems. They don't have hip problems. They don't have any of these issues. They have the Indian toilet. They squat down, they sit down, right? That's it. They don't sit on chairs. And I think it's important. So what I try and do every day is try to get 10 to 15 minutes of sitting cross-legged on the floor. That changes your health as well. That changes your mobility. And when you change stuff like that, you improve the quality of your life. And for me, quality of life matters way more than how long I live. I'm sorry, I know that might be controversial, but for me, quality of life matters way more than how long I live. One more thing before I kind of move out and give the stage to everyone else. This is something I hear a lot of in my life as a coach, right? What's your purpose? Why do you train, right? I'm not an athlete. Why should I train like an athlete, right? In my opinion, life is your biggest athletic event. It's an athletic event. You've got to kind of look at things differently. We know we always, I've met so many people who come to me and say, but I'm not training for the Olympics. Why are you pushing me so much? You're training for life. And I think it's very important that everyone has a purpose in everything we do, whether that's work, life, training, fitness, longevity. You've got to have a purpose. You've got to have something you look forward to. For me, that kind of gets you what you want to get. Now, I'll tell you what my purpose is or what my idea of fitness is. And I'm happy if any one of you all want to share that, your own purpose. I became a father at a slightly late age. My second son was born when I was 40, right? Now, when he's 20, wants to play a sport, he seems to be keen on sport already. But when he wants to play a sport at 20, I'll be about 60, right? He can't be better than me, I'm sorry. It doesn't work. It could be any sport. I played cricket at the under-19s, the under-17s, the under-23s for my state. There's no chance he's beating me at cricket. There's no chance he's going to be better than me. For me, that is fitness. I don't care about the way I look. I don't care about whether I have abs. I don't care how thin I am or what my weight is. For me, fitness is the ability to do what you want to do when you want to do it without second-guessing yourself. And when fitness becomes that, and you get that as a purpose, life changes, right? And then you kind of start working on yourself a lot more. I can go on about this topic. I'm sorry, it's the most important topic for me. But I'm going to kind of finish off with a few myths. I promise you I will be done in 30 seconds. I promise you. Okay? The first thing, it's right up on the screen. Cardio is your answer to every single health issue you ever have. I don't agree with it. I think that, like I've already touched upon, strength training is a very important aspect of your fitness and your health as well. Second point is the most important one, the one I see a lot of, is women should not strength train because they look big or they look bulky or they look like men. That's the worst thing I've heard. The only people who tell women they look like men when they strength train, in my opinion, are insecure men. Right? It just doesn't make sense to me. There is no reason why a woman should not strength train. And a woman will not look bulky. You do not have enough testosterone in your body to get bulky that fast. Unless you're doing something on the side. Now that I'm not going to touch upon. And my last thing, and I've already touched upon this, is protein is not safe for you. It's perfectly safe. I have met parents who have come to me and said, my son wants to have a protein shake. And, isn't that unsafe for him? Isn't that going to hurt him? I was like, oh, okay, fine. Does your son have ice cream? Yeah. Does your son have diet sodas? 100%. What's the problem with that? But protein's an issue, right? I don't get it. It doesn't make sense to me. So that's my 2 bits about what you wanted me to talk about. Hopefully that made a little bit of sense, and hopefully you'll take something back home. So thank you.